Oh look, a new power-up. I sure do wonder what this one does. Sweet mother of... Hello everyone, and welcome to my 7th devlog for Left Turn Legend, the most accurate, down-to-earth simulation of American motorsport, with no exaggerations or hyperbole whatsoever. My name is Raymond, and I'm a game developer and the creator of projects like The Street King. I made a lot of progress on the game, so let's get right into figuring out what the truck is going on. Back in Devlog 6, I added 6 new cars, so I think it's pretty fitting that there are 7 new cars for Devlog 7. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. Starting off with the oddball of the 7, the Plutonium has radioactive styling, but is an otherwise average American sedan. Now, let's move on to the next generation of Legends Cup race cars. These are all newer cars which represent the current decade. The Crown, Bullet, and Hornet return, but with some major upgrades. The Crown SAD was tuned by the Special Autosports division to produce a quick sedan which ultimately can't escape its origins as a big ol' boat. The Bullet RT760 is the ultimate bullet, the most powerful, the fastest, and the least fuel efficient ever. If you do enough donuts though, you can burn through the tires faster than the gas. Following in the footsteps of its rival, the Hornet SCX, or Supercharged Experimental, has a similar philosophy. Stick in a V8, supercharge it, and you're good to go. On the topic of gas guzzlers, let's take a dive into America's truck obsession with the 3 competitors in the all-new Truck Cup. The Trooper is one of America's oldest truck models and has annoying fanboys, or to be more polite, brand loyalists, everywhere. On the other hand, the Sesquicentennial gives it some fierce competition. The third and final truck, the Blizzard, is a bit of an outsider as a Japanese truck in the American market. Nonetheless, it's found its footing and is here to stay. I mentioned in the previous devlog that I've been learning how to use Blender. At this point, I pretty much completely transitioned to Blender for 3D modeling, and that's what I use for all 7 of these new models. Money, money, money. They say it can't buy you happiness, but it can get you some sweet new cars in Left Turn Legend, and that's basically the next best thing. After all, we really live in a society. Oh, you want to know how to earn it? With coins, of course. There are now some shiny new L's all over the track for you to take. It works exactly how you'd expect. Just drive into the coins to get some dough. For once, I decided not to use free sound effects and ended up recording my own. The coin spawning algorithm was relatively simple because it builds off of the systems I created in previous videos. To get several coins to appear in a row, I can make use of the fact that the track is a perfect ellipse. The spawner chooses a randomly sized ellipse within the track limits, picks a segment along it, and then positions the coins down the segment to get nice, predictable arcs of money. It's finally time to focus on the wacky new power-ups. There are technically only 2 new power-ups, but it's also sort of like 3 new ones. Let's call it 2.5. I'll explain exactly what I mean by this when we get there. The first new power-up is a magnet. It'll up any nearby coins so that you're able to collect everything you pass. The next new power-up is a crazy turbo boost. Well, not really, because it's nowhere near how turbochargers actually work in real cars, but that's beside the point. If you collect the turbo power-up, you'll get an absolutely bonkers surge in power. I got the idea to make this when I was just messing around instead of actually developing the game. I was doing stupid things like changing the speed values of the cars to ridiculous values, and it ended up being pretty fun. So, I decided to make it into a power-up. In addition to the massive speed boost, the turbo power-up will also give you invincibility while boosting. It's basically impossible to avoid hitting anything when you use the power-up, so this was pretty much the only way to make sure it didn't do more harm than good. The final new power-up isn't really its own thing. Instead, it's random. When you collect the random power-up, it'll pick any of the 8 other real power-ups and apply their effects instead. But it's impossible to tell beforehand which one you'll get. Compared to the power-ups I introduced in previous videos, the visual effects used in the magnet and turbo power-ups are quite a bit more involved. So, I thought it'd be fun to take a deeper dive into how they work. The magnet's visual effects consist of 2 parts. A particle system that spits out a continuous stream of spark particles, and an animated magnetic wave field. The magnetic waves work by scrolling a single 2D texture along. This texture is projected onto a circular model with texture coordinates that are set up so that it's able to take that scrolling and make it look like shrinking waves. Just leaving the waves like this, though, looked pretty ugly because they would clip through the ground. I fixed this with only a single tiny change to the shader code. Now, the waves would always render on top of everything else. The turbo effects can be broken down into 4 major components. Starting with the simpler parts, particle systems located at each wheel give off the blue turbo clouds. Next, a cone with a scrolling texture that works very similarly to the magnet wave effects surrounds the car. Things start to get much more interesting with the stretched taillight effects. I initially tried using Unity's trail renderers since they seemed like the natural choice, but they didn't actually match the shape of the car's taillights. I went back to the drawing board and discovered that particle systems can be set to emit particles based on movement. We can emit a bunch of taillight-shaped particles whenever the car moves, which will linger for a short bit before fading away. This creates a trail of red light which exactly matches the taillight shape. The final part of the visuals is the stretching effect, which distorts your view and really helps to sell the sense of speed. This is done with a post-processing effect I wrote, which means that it applies the effect after the rest of the scene is completely done rendering. To stretch the screen, we can move around the locations of the pixels on the screen. Writing this into the actual post-processing code means that we need a way to specify how far in the X and Y directions each pixel should be moved. To do this, I created this colorful texture which encodes all of the data that we need.
That doesn't make sense.
Okay, let's break down how this image stores this info. I explained how computers work with colors back in Devlog 2, but to summarize, every color is really just 3 numbers ranging from 0 to 1, which represent red, green, and blue. If we split the image into its red, green, and blue channels, we end up with these 3 separate images. Brighter values are closer to 1, while darker ones are closer to 0. The red channel stores how far to stretch a part of the image to the left or the right. As you can see, it's brightest on the left, which corresponds to a strong stretch there, and darkest on the right, which corresponds to an equally strong stretch, but in the opposite direction. In the middle, it's a medium red, which corresponds to minimal stretching. Similarly, the green channel stores how far to stretch part of the image up or down. The final blue channel has darker corners, which corresponds to the darkened corners when using the turbo power-up. These 3 channels combine with each other and the post-processing effect code to give the turbo effect some more flavor. This concludes Devlog 7 for Left Turn Legend. I'd like to give a special thanks to TLM10's Gaming for being a King Patron and supporting me and my games. If you'd like to help out, be sure to check out my Patreon page in the video description. Feel free to comment if you have any questions or thoughts, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. That's all I've got to say for now, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.